Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3733 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show, comedy on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. We can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. And serendipity has reigned supreme on this show many a time, and triangulation, however you want to say it, ping-ponging around as I continue to do a deep dive into our cultural heritage. And when I was transcribing, basically the bottom line is this, that I've reached out to luminary cats who were creating well before I was born, and I'm not in awe of these guys because I'm not really a musician. So I just started to talk to these cats about truth and love and leadership, and all of a sudden it was Jim Keltner, and it was Glenn Clark, and it was Kenny Gradney, and it was it continues on at thousands and over 1,000 interviews. And I'm transcribing this interview with Gradney, and he's like, yeah, I just saw Jim Keltner the other day at this concert we were playing at for this eye doctor we all go to see, this amazing eye doctor. I'm like, what? He said, this guy, Dr. Feinfield. I said, Feinfield? So I talked to Keltner about it. And I eventually I would say, this cat, he obviously he's got his day job, but he clearly is passionate, and he clearly has incredible taste in music, and actually is a musician in his own right, and has several charities as well dedicated to the arts and music. And it is a high honor to bring on an ophthalmologist, Dr. Rob Feinfield. Welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thanks, Jake. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
If you could talk about the drive and the motivation that you have every day. Willie Dixon, Keltner, these are different kinds of cats, but just the idea of knowing, if you could put it in perspective to the audience, the fact that when people are losing their vision, they're losing their primary sense, and how much that drives you on your mission to try to preserve that, and how much it's touched your heart along the way.
Yeah, well, I'm very fortunate to be, first of all, to be a doctor. And my father was a doctor, and he was a very, very prominent internist cardiologist, and started the paramedic program for the fire department in California, in Los Angeles, for example. And so those roots go way, way back. And then, again, very fortunate to be in the field of ophthalmology, because so much of what we do is positive for folks, and so readily apparent when we have our results, and certainly trying to prevent loss of vision or restoring vision. It's not one of those things that, maybe we succeeded or maybe we didn't. You pretty well know, and so does the patient. And so, it works out, not necessarily 100% of the time, but the vast majority of the time we really get great results, and it's a very gratifying field to be involved with. It's just this last week I saw a post-operative patient who had corrected her eyelid. She had one eyelid that was drooping tremendously, very, very lopsided. She had what's called ptosis of her eyelid that had been there for years, and I was able to do a procedure, and it just came out beautifully and very symmetric, and it just gave me a warm feeling to walk into the room, and within a tenth of a second I can see the result, and a big smile on her face. There's just nothing like that. That's an honor to be able to do what I do and what my colleagues and I do. So it's
Have you worked with kids with multiple disabilities or adults?
Oh, absolutely. We have a pediatric ophthalmologist in our practice.
Right.
Who's excellent. So she really does all of the pediatric procedures. Every now and then, though, I do see kids in the office for just run-of-the-mill infections and what have you. And certainly in the adult population, we work with all kinds of eye problems that are associated with other disabilities. For example, Down syndrome. We have a number of Down syndrome patients who end up having cataracts that need attention, and their requirements for sedation and anesthesia might be different than a a normal adult. And so it's there are all kinds of challenges that we're faced with what we do, and that's what makes going to work every day interesting. One day is never the same as the next.
Why we've been just going through this, Dean Parks, Brown Nagel, Gradney, these guys are are part of the musicians union. They have insurance for the most part. Let's talk, maybe not, can you talk about a cat or cats that you have seen die because they haven't had insurance? And what I'm trying to lead to is this whole idea of shining a light on this idea of corrective eye surgery or opportunities for eye exams for cats. Why would musicians not have insurance? If you could just enlighten people about that, and maybe even give an example of something that you saw, that you've seen.
Yeah, well, I should just say, fortunately, most people do have some access to care here in Southern California, and particularly the Affordable Care Act. And, it's very topical of our discussion, of course,
That's
given
right.
what the Senate just voted on 2 days ago.
That's my Senator McCain right there.
Yeah, and I stayed up to watch that live.
Oh, wow.
And he did the thing of it is, and I have a lot of friends who are on the other side of the aisle, and we have spirited discussions about this. And the bottom line is that, when you're involved in actually providing health care, and you see it from, the trenches, and I have very wealthy patients who can spend $5,000 for refractive laser surgery or cosmetic eyelid surgery, and I have patients who absolutely have no insurance and nothing to fall back on, including obviously some musicians. You see a different point of view, and you see that there's a need, and we have to as a society address these needs. And I think societies are ultimately judged by how well you take care of your least fortunate individuals. And so that's something I think is important. I'm in favor of single payer health care in some form anyway, so that no one falls through the cracks.
When you talk to your buds, on the other side, are they unable to, like, I don't know. I mean, I remember talking to Densmore. I'm not sure if he's a client of yours either, but John was like, when he got into the lawsuit with Krieger and Manzarek about going on the road to be the Doors, and John's like, I'm not going, man. I'm not. You guys, bless yourselves, but you can't use that name. He goes, man, you just get so wrapped tight. I mean, do these cats realize that they're not going to lose anything? Nothing's going to change if they have to give a little bit more, so that our society can actually be more of a positive place. I mean, I don't understand. I see, we have dear friends. My wife is Taiwanese, so we have my kids are, so we have this huge Chinese cultural community here, and we have these amazing doctors who are doing, all sorts of dermatological, progressive stuff, and people are paying $1,200 co-pays. It's like they're in a blink of an eye. And it seems to me, it's like, do your friends, when you talk to them, do they realize that this is about humanity? This is not a handout, and that they're not going to lose it. I mean, the greed factor, man. I mean, how did we get to this point? I mean, I don't want you to,
well,
go ahead.
It really, the way I look at it, and in my discussions with my friends on the right side of the aisle, what it fundamentally comes down to are this idea of risk pools. And if you listen to Paul Ryan with his get up there and explain this to the Congress with his pie charts, how the healthy are paying for the sick, and that's not right. And I'm watching him talk, saying, what are you talking about, fool? That's exactly how it works.
Exactly.
The healthy do pay for the sick. And guess what? Everyone is at risk. If you're alive on this planet, you are at risk. You cannot segregate people into low-risk pools, high-risk pools. That's not how insurance works. It works because you have everybody is contributing. Everybody has skin in the game. Everybody is at risk, and so everybody needs to pay. And so, and for those who absolutely have nothing, that's when the government does need to come in, along with other charities and so forth, to help people who absolutely have nothing. Because fundamentally, people who have nothing, they don't want to be that way. That's not their goal in life. That's not. And unfortunate things happen to people, and you have to help people out. So, and then the other issue that I'll tell people is that in the end, it's more efficient. It's more cost effective, because when people show up to an emergency room who don't have coverage, everybody else pays for it. Everyone else has to pay. The hospital pays. I have to pay. Everyone pays for it, and they don't. You got to. How can you not see that? You have to look down the road. You have to have a larger picture and perspective to understand that everybody pays one way or the other. So you have to be proactive, and the way to be proactive is to have everybody involved in the system, and with preventive care and also with therapeutic care. And I posted on Facebook not long ago, when this whole debate was happening in the Senate. I said, do you think it's a good idea to have an emergency room within 5 or 10 minutes of where you live? Do you think that's a good concept? Because guess what? At our emergency room here at St. Joseph Medical Center in Burbank, California, 50% of the patients are Medicaid patients. And, prior to the ACA, most of them were cash patients. And cash patients, that usually means that the hospital is going to have no revenue. So in the end, that emergency room was on its way to shutting its doors. So for all the rich people who live in the neighborhood, do you want to have, when you call 911, do you want the paramedics to take you to some place where they can save your life, or just start driving around and making phone calls? Because that's what's going to happen. The hospitals and the ERs will close, and that's just one symptom of the problem. So, healthcare is not just a commodity like anything.
You know what
else.
it is? You're Dr. Feinfield, this is so important. But I mean, can you humor me? And is it when your friends, what do they say to that? What do they say?
Well, I think most of the time I'm somewhat persuasive. I think when they talk to a doctor who actually lived the life, it's hard to argue with me, because I see it. I can see it from both points of view.
Sure.
By the way, I also have a very large practice with 37 employees who I pay health insurance for. So you can't tell me that I don't understand what it's like to run a business, because I do.
Right.
So
wow.
But some people are just going to have a very rigid point of view. But I think as we've seen in the last 6 months with the circus that's going on in the White House, I think even people on the right are starting to realize that things are not quite right.
Well,
and that
I mean,
the ship needs to be sailing along a little bit more smoothly than it is.